All right, welcome back, everybody. So today we'll be talking about coding boot camps. Mainly just my opinion on them, and just a little bit of a spoiler alert. It's not positive. So with that being said, let's just get into it. So coding boot camps. A lot of people or a lot of coding boot camp companies like to market themselves as like, become or get a six-figure developer job in under 12 weeks. And I mean, I know that sounds like a bold claim, and it really is because I think it's too good to be true. I mean, think about it for a second. Do you really think that you can go from being somebody with zero coding knowledge to within 3 months' time getting a job at some company that's paying you six figures? I mean, like those companies that are offering that salary are having competition from actually like CS trained like at universities, computer science, master's degrees, bachelor's degrees, all that stuff. So you're competing with those people who already have industry experience and like accredited credentials from universities versus someone who just walked off the street and decided to pay tens of thousands of dollars to get some sort of fast track education program to become a software engineer. Who do you think is going to win out in the end? I mean, obviously the person with a CS background and formal training and internships, I mean, they're going to win like 100% of the time. There's just no competition. And so that's my main problem with this is because there used to be a golden age for coding boot camps back then, like in 2013, 2014, 15. Back then, when they were a new concept, I felt like maybe the instructors could kind of give more, instructors can give sort of more intimate learning to their students. It was just a new concept. And I felt like companies were more open to it back then because it was just such a novel idea. But looking at it nowadays, coding boot camps are now just churning out students, right? Because after coding boot camps became successful and started getting mainstream attention, they started to become, I guess, like commercialized. And so their entire goal is just to fill up a cohort of students, 30 to 40 students, like per class or whatever, hundreds of thousands of dollars collected. And they just want to get as many students going through their program as possible and then just kick them out. And then that's it, kick them to the curb and be like, okay, now do whatever you want with this knowledge. And I just feel like most coding boot camps just don't do you any justice. Like they kind of just throw you in there and they give you very little information and just expect you to figure it out and talk with your fellow students and whatnot. And I mean, that's great, but it's just like if you're paying like $20,000 to just be in a classroom to learn to code, I mean, it doesn't sit right with me because all this stuff that you're learning in coding boot camp can easily be learned on your own. And I mean, I used to go to a coding boot camp, right? So I went to this coding boot camp called Coding Dojo. It was in Bellevue, Washington, and I went there for 1 week. And being there for 1 week told me everything I needed to know about the place, and I just didn't have a good feeling about it. First things first, I don't really like the classroom. I don't like structured curriculums. It just never sat well with me. So maybe that's just my learning style. But when I walked in on the first day, literally they gave us a book, maybe like this thick with like, algorithms and all this other stuff in there. And it's really just structured curriculums that you can, like, honestly, if you looked hard enough online, you can probably find the same curriculum somewhere for free or just YouTube. So there's nothing new there, but they gave you this packet. Like, here's the curriculum, here's everything we're going to study. Like on week, 2, we're going to do this, week 3, we're going to do that, blah, blah, blah. And it's just sort of like, there was just a lot of pressure. Like you go in, you don't know any code. Like most of these people don't have any technical background. They never coded prior to this. Like they're literally just walking into this. They've paid a crap ton of money and they're just like, all right, teach me how to code. And literally day one, it's like, build a website, here's what the website looks like. We want you to recreate it. It's like, well, I don't know CSS. I don't know HTML. How am I supposed to do this? And they say they want it done by the end of the week. And like, how am I supposed to figure that out? It's just like, it's just so much pressure. And I guess it's supposed to help you learn. But I felt like, honestly, for the most part, you're kind of just thrown to the wolves. And then if you really needed help, the instructors would come in. But I mean, like I say, I'm going to keep saying this, but you could easily just do this on your own. Like if you wanted to build a website, like let's say you wanted to build a Reddit clone, for example, you can figure out how to do this on your own time, like after work or whatever, just playing around with HTML, CSS, and just trying to get a feel for it on your own. You don't necessarily need to be put in an environment like in the classroom doing this. And it kind of leads me to another issue. Like even though I left after a week, One of the things is they have a bunch of projects that you have to do. Like they have a bunch of like, I think it was like three major projects, and the final project's like your capstone project or something like that. And so what would happen is, you build up a couple weeks and you do a project like a big one. And all these projects, they're just cookie cutter. Like there's nothing special about them. Like everyone in the classroom had to do. I mean, I don't even know like what the apps or like applications were. It's just like everyone's just building the same web app, right? And so there's a certain way to do it, and the problem I have with that is that the school, the coding bootcamp designed that project in a certain way because the instructors can help on certain aspects of it, and there's like a certain way to do things. And so the main issue with these cookie cutter projects is that they don't introduce anything new, right? They're just that they're cookie cutter, and they don't really introduce real world pressure, I would say. And that's kind of the issue with learning in a classroom environment, is because you're learning how to code, like doing this rigorous program, you know figuring things out on your own, but it's all within a classroom context. And so there's a huge issue with that, because in the classroom things are expected to work a certain way. Instructors are there to help. Like let's say there's a common issue debugging this part of the web app. Instructors are already aware of it because they designed that curriculum. But in the real world, if you're designing something, there's no fallback. You just have to figure it out, right? Like while working at Amazon, there's one thing that I always said to myself, and it was true time and time and again. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. And that's the reality of working in an actual company, right? In a classroom, everything's all, hunky dory, like everything works fine, because if you have trouble, the instructors know exactly which part of the web app people are going to struggle with the most. And so they know exactly how to help them. But take that away, take the structure out of that curriculum or out of that project, and you throw these developers or the students out there to like build something from scratch, it's not really going to work. I mean, again, because they don't actually know how to handle things when they go wrong. And so bottom line, in coding boot camps, you're not really solving any new problems. Like it's just all structured in a certain way. And in the end, when you get out of coding boot camp, I don't care what coding boot camp you go to, you're not job ready. Like you aren't. And this kind of speaks to a larger problem, because a lot of people who go to coding boot camps eventually just give up on their dreams of being a developer, because they get out and they have this idea in their head like, oh, I'm ready to make six figures. But no, you're not. You're competing against people like me. I've already worked several jobs. You're competing against other people who have CS degrees, masters in CS, they have internships. Like you don't really have a chance. And so to think that you can just go to a 3-month coding boot camp and have the same skill set as people like me or like others that I've described, you're delusional. Like it's not realistic. And so what usually ends up happening is these students end up getting jobs as like developer advocates, which I don't even know what that is, but I know it's a thing. Support engineers or something that's mildly tech related, but not actually being a software engineer. And so I see this a lot with coding boot camps, is like they inflate their numbers, like, oh, we have a 80% success rate with our students, but they really just count anything like mildly related to tech as a job. And what they usually do is they hire the bootcamp alumni as instructors for their program, and then they count that as a win. But in my experience, most of the people I went to coding bootcamp with, like I kept tabs on them, most of them didn't actually succeed in what they were trying to do. Most of them just kind of like, most of them failed at achieving their dreams of being a developer. I think only 1 or 2 people actually got what they wanted. I knew this one guy who was really good. He went above and beyond. He was already coding previously to the coding bootcamp. So this guy, he had the passion, he had the desire, he did everything right. And after going to coding bootcamp, he put in the extra effort. Like he didn't just rely on the coding bootcamp as a crutch to essentially give him success. He used that as leverage, and then used that as a springboard, essentially, like the knowledge that he learned there, to essentially go and build his own projects and make himself better outside of the classroom. And that's really what it takes to be successful. If you can do that, then maybe a coding bootcamp will work for you. But for the most part, it just doesn't, because a lot of people see it as sort of like a get rich quick, or maybe not get rich quick, but it's just like you see the advertisements like make 6 figures in 12 weeks. And I think people just get this idea in their head like, oh, I can become a solid coder in 12 weeks. And it's just not the case. I mean, I spent like 6 months studying on my own, and before I started applying to jobs. And I mean, through trial and error, I was able to finally get my first startup job, but it's not easy. And to think that some classroom 3-month class is going to get you there just right out of the gate is it's a bit naive, I think. And to further emphasize this point, imagine you saw an ad saying, become a civil engineer in 12 weeks. Now, civil engineers, it's complex engineering field, involves lots of mathematics and a bunch of other skill sets. But if a school was touting that they could teach you to become a civil engineer in 12 weeks, I would be skeptical. I don't know about you, but that sounds pretty skeptical to me. So when it's in the context of a software engineer, why is it all of a sudden, why aren't people questioning it, So to me, that just seems kind of a bit far-fetched. Coding bootcamps, I think, are a great way if you have the money and are willing to sacrifice the time. And if you're willing to sacrifice the time and like $20,000 and that's okay with you, then do a coding bootcamp, get introduced to all those coding concepts, use that as your foundation. And then after coding bootcamp, use the knowledge that you learn there as a springboard to go and do your own things. You have to build your personal projects, study algorithms, data structures. So leak coding, check out other online courses on Udemy, on YouTube. Kind of learn to learn, right? You got to teach yourself with the stuff that you learned from coding bootcamp. And that's the most valuable skill you can have, is learning to learn. As a self-taught developer, I had to figure out everything on my own, right? So I didn't know about data structures, so I looked up data structures, and then algorithms. How do you do algorithms? Well, you got to have a good, solid understanding of data structures to get good at algorithms. And it's and then with algorithms, how do you improve upon them? Well, you have to understand big O complexity. So it's just sort of you have to dive deep on your own and just sort of find the things that you have to focus on, like I did. And anyone can do this. It takes time and effort, but if I can do it, you can certainly do it. So I'm not anyone special. So I just don't see the need to have a coding bootcamp do that for you. I'm just a firm believer that you're capable of doing great things on your own, and you don't need to spend a lot of money to be able to do those things. Finally, some closing thoughts. It's just, my problem with coding bootcamps is that I've met people who've gotten out of them, fresh out of a coding bootcamp, and you try talking to them about basic stuff, that I've learned, data structures, algorithms, big O, just really basic stuff, and they have no clue what you're talking about, because the curriculums at these schools sometimes are just not even that great, So for me, if you were to ask me, I would say keep your money and just learn on your own time. And if you have trouble doing that, I plan on making a video talking about free learning resources and resources that I use. So if you're interested, leave a like and comment down below. Let me know what you think of that. But yeah, so all in all, my personal opinion, I'm biased towards being self-taught, self-learning, self-improvement. That's my advice. Just go ahead and do that. It's a very flexible path. You can do it after work. You can just learn on your own time. Whereas with the coding bootcamp, you just have a huge money investment, a huge time investment, and then there's just mixed results. So coupled with all those things, I just don't really see it as a huge benefit. But I could be wrong. I'm not saying that if you go to a coding bootcamp, you're going to be a failure. I know there are some people out there that have gone to a coding bootcamp and have had success. So if you are one of those people, then I like to hear from you as well. So just let me know down in the comments if coding bootcamp has worked out for you. Kind of just tell me about it. What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? I'd be really interested in knowing. Maybe it might change my perspective a little bit. But for me, I feel like I'm pretty dead set on self-learning because I've had amazing success with it. Again, I went from being self-taught, not knowing how to code, to getting into Amazon, which is a dream for a lot of people, in around 2 years. So again, I'm not saying this to brag, but if I can do it, you can do it. So that's going to do it for this video. Hopefully you found it entertaining, informative. Hopefully I didn't bounce around too much for you guys. But yeah, with that being said, I also like to just mention something real quick. So I've recently created a new training program called Coding Expert. And this is essentially just an online program with a bunch of in-depth video tutorials breaking down algorithms, data structures, just everything you need to kind of get prepared for the coding interview. So if that interests you, please check out the link in the description. I think you'll find it very helpful. So yeah, anyways, that's going to do it for this video, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.